Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. Tom Sheppard, my friend, it's great to have you on here. So, a little context. I've been checking out Tom's stuff on T Nation, kind of around the same time I've been writing for T Nation for a while. And we finally met in person at Swiss in the fall. And very quickly, so who is Tom Sheppard? Tom Sheppard is a strength coach, but works with Dave Tate at Elite FTS, which is huge. And I was just there to appear on Table Talk. So that was an amazing opportunity. Thank you for the invitation. But you also work, not only do you work with industry icon Dave Tate, you also work closely with Christian Thibodeau, another strength icon. So you're really in the strength world with some of the best of the best.
Oh yeah, I've been very, very lucky to have very good close relationships with people that were very much idols, that I looked up to. Christian Thibodeau was probably my first main kind of idol in the fitness industry in terms of the methods that he uses and the variety of things that he kind of experimented with. He wasn't just a coach that stuck to his lane and did one thing. I really liked that about him, with the idea of trying to cater for as many people as humanly possible. There's no one size fits all. And then, getting also then to work with Dave Tate, who just has so much experience, not just in of himself, but the amount of people that he has in his network and has been able to get knowledge from over his years in the industry as well. Like, being close to him is kind of like being close to 50 experts at once in many ways. So I'm incredibly lucky and blessed to have been exposed to those individuals in the way that I have. And I try to just remain as humble as humanly possible and be like a sponge, because every bit that I learn, I just realize there's 5 other things I don't know. And being in the environment I'm in now over here in the US, as opposed to being in the UK, is fantastic, because it just adds another layer of knowledge that I can get access to via the table talk and stuff like that. Like, having people like yourself on the table talk it's a fantastic experience to just be able to sit down and talk shop with people in that type of environment, because even just passively you pick up so much, and it's been a really fantastic part of my career over the last couple of years, being able to do that.
Well, your humility shines through. So, I mean, for context, I didn't even tell you this. Like, I remember you, I see your media around, and certainly a teenage writer. And I think people can assign certain things. You're a physically imposing human being. You got the most facial piercings I think I've ever seen on a person. Like, and forgive the joke, but you look like someone attacked you with a nail gun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta believe that airport scanners, they see you and they're like, okay, you're coming around here. We're gonna pat you down.
I get every random security check. I remember we were coming back home from our honeymoon in Aruba, and we were flying through Miami, and this is me domesticated. Naomi's done a great job of kind of reining me in a little bit. And I had like a 2 foot tall, pink mohawk at the time then too. And they pulled me aside and they wanted us to start. I'm like, dude, what drug cartel looks at me and goes, that's the dude that's going to sneak through security? Subtle, completely unseen. But every time.
And to the point, so when we met, what I discover is this genial, humble, giving person. And that was, again, my experience when I was down at Table Talk, really endearing. So it was really important for me to get you on so people see the side. And one of the things we're going to dive into is you're quite open about the fact that you've had mental health battles with your career. And so I'll start with this question. We can see where we go. It's like, how important is the gym for your mental health?
I think that gets vastly underrated, not just in my own circumstance, but, without sounding too philosophical and kind of Eastern, I've come to the realization in the last couple of years that I think it's almost futile to think that a really truly healthy mind can exist in a really unhealthy body, and vice versa. I think the more that we get into a mindset of treating the mind and the body as 2 separate entities, the worse we get at looking after either of them. And it shouldn't be that surprising that any form of physical activity tends to help people in that regard, and people will cling on to different ones. Like, for me, it was weightlifting. Thanks to my older brother basically saved my life, getting me in the gym, and we can go down that rabbit hole at some point. But, for others, it will be running or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter. Which may sound like something weird to say as a strength coach, but I don't care what the people I coach are really passionate about. I just want people to do something that is in tune with what they feel gives them a benefit. And we spoke a little bit on the table talk about how, of course, there are physical benefits to training, whatever your training might look like, but it goes so far beyond that that I think that is really not doing it a service to say that it's just physical benefits, because everything is so intertwined that it goes to a deeper level than that. And I think there's a reason why now so many people are turning to it and finding like a salvation or a refuge in it, because it's just allowing us to become more, should we say, in line with what we're supposed to do at the end of the day. We're not supposed to sit down all day and not be outside and be antisocial creatures in any way. And in reality, if we really took a step back and looked at our lifestyle compared to maybe how we developed cognitively and physically, we shouldn't be that surprised that we're all suffering for it.
I mean, I believe there's a very strong relationship between the metabolic unhealth of certainly North America. And North America is not necessarily representative of the rest of the world, but there's certain concurrent trends in the Western world, and the prevalence of mental health issues as well. I don't think it's the only thing by any stretch. I certainly believe that in my own experience with my clients and across social media, people do tend to start in the gym for aesthetic reasons, for like physical health reasons. Very often they realize just how powerful it is for their mental health that they tend to often stay, and they're cognizant of the fact that they continue to do it because their mental health becomes a big part. And your initial quote, I'm thinking of, God, I can't remember the quotes, but I know Socrates had a famous quote, I believe, about, mind and body and physical health. And JFK had something as well along those lines. Now, is it enough, right? Can the gym be the only outlet for mental health for people? This episode is brought to you by Just Bite Me Meals. I work long days and I won't compromise my client experience or sacrifice my workout, sleep, or nutrition. So I needed a quality and reliable meal prep service so I could save time on cooking and shopping and have more time for the stuff that matters. Net out the cost of groceries and the service isn't as much as you might think, and regular impulsive food delivery apps, eating out, that costs way more anyway. I get more meal variety and less dishes to clean, and I've been referring clients to Just Bite Me Meals for a long time, and I recently started ordering myself. Food is great. The beef brisket tacos are my favorite so far, and there's a lot of menu choice. Your calories and macros are listed. The portions are great. You can order custom meals. They deliver to your door, or you can pick up from their storefront. And I'm sorry to listeners outside of Alberta, but Just Bite Me Meals is currently just in Edmonton, Calgary, Grand Prairie, and Fort McMurray. Ordering from Just Bite Me Meals made my life easier instantly. And you can get 10% off on all your orders using my code, Andrew Coates Fitness, all caps, on their website. That's Andrew Coates Fitness, all capitals, or go to the link and the code in the show notes.
That's a great question. I think it's a damn good one to start with, but I think no one should ever have their entire character, well-being, confidence, whatever you want to call it, hinging on a single factor. It's just too fragile, and, to a lesser extent, you see this in people that you coach, the people that have just the gym and not much else going on in their lives, maybe a job, they don't like their job, they don't have a good family support network, etc. When the gym goes badly, everything goes badly because it's all just stacked on top of that one pillar. When that one pillar doesn't go well, then everything goes with it. The diet goes out the window, their mood goes out the window, they stop trying at work, they stop socializing, all these types of things. So I think the gym is a pillar that should be used because physical wellness, physical activity is a pillar of what being a human being is, in my opinion, at least as a healthy one. But I think for most, it's the most approachable and probably gives the best return on investment when we're, say, trying to get out of a dark place, right? Like when we initially, if we think of like being in a dark place, it's just kind of more like, rather than it being dark, think of all your options are kind of closed. Everything's behind a closed door. And sometimes just opening that door of what happens when I go to the gym, what happens when I just make a small step where I just try to put more effort into something. It could be running around the park rather than walking around the park. It could be going from jogging around the park to doing some jumps up on the bench, or it could be going and doing your first workout in the gym that you find intimidating. Any of those represent a step of investment that maybe is intimidating or stressful that you survive. And that starts, in my opinion, a positive feedback loop where I did something in a relatively safe way. It paid dividends. Nothing bad happened. I can do something. I'm capable of doing more than I am right now. And then so on and so forth. Now, obviously, the physical benefits have kind of a positive effect on that spiral. But I do genuinely think that most of the cognitive mental health benefits of the gym come from us being put in an environment where we can be challenged and fail repeatedly if we want to or if we need to, but safely, and then ultimately eventually get slightly better. And there are very few other facets of life where you can just fail repeatedly and go back and try and try and try and try again, and everything will be okay. But in the gym, you can try to lift whatever weight, or you can challenge yourself to do a workout where, it's like in your head, you start the workout and 20% of the way through, you're like, I don't think I got this today. And lo and behold, you usually do. It allows us to expose ourselves to an environment where we have to try and ask a bit more of ourselves, which I feel we don't have a lot of in our regular day-to-day life now, unless you're some kind of athlete, a pro athlete, or maybe you're in the military or something like that, where expectations are kind of put upon you. I feel it's very easy for us to ghost through life. And I feel many people maybe are stuck in that, whereas the gym represents then a challenge where, sure, you can ghost through the gym, but very, very quickly you realize that you don't get much in return for that. And all of a sudden the gym just starts mirroring what happens on a macro scale in the rest of your life on a micro scale that you can now relate to. It's kind of like, if your whole world is chaos, the gym is just the little corner there that you can start controlling. And now you have somewhere to start. Like if you just look at chaos and it's just this giant map of, I don't know what's going on, that's intimidating. But if you've got somewhere to start and you start controlling this and you start seeing benefits here, then you have a point, an anchor point from which you can work out from. And maybe that's not a great analogy for some, but I feel that the gym offers that anchor point to so many people that it allows them to then go on and branch out into the other parts of their life that maybe need work too.
I think it's a perfect analogy, and I like this. You're a level 1 character in a video game. That is your life, and you're set before you measurable tasks. So I think one of the things about the gym is oftentimes, if you at least have a starting point and the skill set, there's a certain amount of weight you can lift. And it's about creating a hormetic stress that is just enough stress that is difficult and challenging, but within your abilities or just at the border of it. And then, you can hit failure on it, but it's enough difficulty that it's not boring. It does reward you. You do see progress, but it's not so overwhelmingly difficult. You go into the gym and your trainer gives you, let's say someone theoretically could bench press 120 pounds. So they give you 250 pounds, put it in your hand, you get crushed under it. There's no lesson in that. And you can't progress off that kind of stimulus. So it's dosing the right amount of stimulus. So this trains self-efficacy. And yes, I'm a big believer in this. I think it builds confidence to go into the real world, and it teaches you that your inputs translate into some sort of output. So you want to take the self-efficacy side, because you were alluding to this about confidence in your ability, in yourself, in the world.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't say this to tell people that they shouldn't seek support or anything like that. There's obviously a place for that, but the point I would make here is when the real work has to be done, whatever the work is in this context, you are on your own. Whether it's you being under the bar, or whether it's you being in that not pleasant place to be, or whether it's you at work every day. Say you're working from home, no one's watching over you, helping you work or making sure you do your job. It's on you. And there's a lot of accountability that is taught in the gym, because it very quickly shows you that no one can follow your diet for you. No one can apply the effort to the weights that you do, or your runs, or whatever it might be. You learn that what you give is what you get. And we also then have to learn that there's delayed gratification, which again maybe is something in our society that's kind of disappearing or being discouraged from. But all of the true things in your life that give you fulfillment, like just think about all the happiest moments in your life, or all the things right now in your life that give you the most satisfaction. How many of them were given to you, or how many of them actually appeared quickly, or without it's going to be a pretty small list, if not non-existent list for most. And it helps us get back into that mindset of it all being on you is not actually a bad thing. It's a good thing, because it means all the power is with you. You don't have to worry about anyone else's input. Other people can, say, oh, what are you doing that for? Why are you following that diet? Why are you following that trick? Like, you're obsessed, or, whatever kind of throwaway comments might get thrown at people when they're starting these journeys, right? But their input is irrelevant. It doesn't have any impact on your goals. You can still go in and you can still do your work. And the term lonely, I think wrongly gets a negative kind of connotation in our verbiage. But the work that really works on a person and makes you a better person is lonely. It is the workouts when you're under the bar and no one is there to help you and you have to do it on your own. It's the stuff when you're at home and you don't want to do whatever it might be. Maybe it's, follow your diet plan or do something with your family that maybe you don't feel like you on your own in that second are making the decision of, I don't feel like doing this right now, but I'm going to anyway, because the dividends are worth it later on. That is making the right decision is usually lonely, and I feel that creating that self-accountability, but the self-confidence that comes with it, like, yes, it's all on you, but that's also okay because you can deal with that, goes hand in hand to create a person that is considerably more stable and more confident and capable of handling much more. And in reality, this may sound a bit callous, but I think for a lot of us, if you can't handle going to the gym and doing a workout, that in the grand scheme of life is a small thing. If you can't handle that, it's going to be very difficult to handle the big things that life throws at you. There's going to be chosen suffering, which is the workouts that you decide to do or whatever it might be for you personally. And then life is always going to throw unchosen suffering at you, which are usually the big hits. But if we can get better at dealing with the little hits in a safe way that we choose to do it, we're in a better position to deal with the big hits that come our way that usually blindside us. And I think maybe that's too philosophical, but I believe that that's why physical training, whether it's lifting a weight or whatever it might be for that individual, creates a more robust person in every aspect.
I believe it. I mean, while I agree with you that I think that a lot of the mental health benefits are from the confidence and self-efficacy and the lessons that we get to say, again, inputs will equal rewards and results. We also know that there are feel-good endorphin hormonal things that happen. There's something physiologically happening that is good for us for our mental health. So here's a different line of thought. Do you think that some people would rather remain victims of their circumstance and subscribe to the narrative that it is all beyond their control, which absolves them of the responsibility to choose, act differently?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that unfortunately is pretty common. I also think though a lot of people aren't aware they're doing that. But I think, again, this might be going down too much of a philosophical rabbit hole, but I think we live in a society where we are encouraged to outsource our happiness to many, many other things, okay? Rather than focusing on the things that we can cultivate ourselves, starting with our own physical and mental health, with good quality relationships, whether it's our friends, our families, our loved ones, etc. We are in a position where we're constantly bombarded with ways of outsourcing pleasure, whether that is, Netflix or fast food or pornography or gambling, drugs, whatever. You can create an infinite list there. But we are constantly bombarded with ways of, if you don't feel good, go over here and get your happiness over here. But the problem is that most of the time, those are all going to be short-lived. And because you didn't cultivate them and they're not lasting stimuli, they come and they go very quickly and they tend to leave this big chasm hole behind them, and what generally happens is the bigger and the quicker the high, the bigger the trough on the other end. And then you end up with these massive kind of big spikes and falls where then you're kind of looking for the next hit. And, we can talk about dopamine and all these types of things, but it doesn't matter what the science is behind it. We know it happens, right? And it happens a lot. Whereas I think in reality, true happiness, fulfillment, whatever you want to call it, exists in a microcosm. And that microcosm is your life day to day. As soon as we start going outsourcing and we start looking at social media and influences outside of our life, that's where I think then should we say, the more frail versions of happiness and fulfillment come from, that come and go so easily and kind of leave you wanting for more. Whereas if you focus on what was right in front of you day in, day out, chances are you're going to be able to work on and cultivate things that make you happy for the rest of your life. And again, I go back to that point. Think of all the things that give you a lot of fulfillment in your life right now. How many of them were based on things that were outside of your life? How many of them were based on things that you're only exposed to once or twice in your lifetime? And how many of them are related to relationships or whatever that took long times to build, and you had to put a lot of effort into creating what they are, most people are going to say it's relationships that have been there for a long time, or habits that have been there, or hobbies that have been there for a long time, because that's where ultimately it lays, because the effort that goes into them kind of determines what you get back out of them. And if something makes you happy really easily, there's probably a reason to be skeptical about it.
I absolutely love this. So, bordering on this, you've alluded to this, we sometimes hear about fitness addiction. So, I definitely want to ask you about where are the lines, right? Because we do have some people in the industry, and there's sort of a pet peeve of mine. They're technically right, but I think they oversell the risks of the almost, they almost talk about the risks in a enabling way to protect people from actually making an effort to try to better themselves. And I've seen this, and I think it's a bit of a grift from sometimes I'm a bit of a hard ass about this, sometimes the activist side that penetrate the fitness industry and masquerade as fitness professionals, when really I think they're self-aggrandizing narcissists who prey upon vulnerable people by peddling the messages of victimhood. And I don't want to go too far to that, but I actually do want people to be kind of wary of these people that sometimes come off as empathetic at the start, but really what they want is they want to be worshipped by people who want to be enabled and into not having to do things. Now, the other side of that, of course, is there is a real danger with fitness addiction. Even though I think a lot of people also, you allude to this, when someone starts taking the gym seriously, they change their life, they change their amount of time they're spending with people, and people will cast it in a negative light to say you're addicted or you're obsessed. So where is the line?
Yeah, this is a great question. I love it. So also, hand up, this is a training addict talking when I say this. So when I say anything negative in that regard, I'm actually talking about myself or what I was for a very long period of time. I mean, I basically swapped one form of self-harm for another. I have 6 suicide attempts in my history, and all in between that, I was physically self-harming. Like, I went through periods of time at university for several years where I was literally cut to ribbons. And that was all that included up to my face and around my eyes, all down my arms and my legs, you name it. So I basically replaced that bit by bit with the gym. So I did use the gym almost as a tool of physical self-harm. I would train twice a day. I would do way too much volume. I would want to be sore as hell. I was terrible at soccer, but I love soccer. So I played soccer, and the only thing you could say about me was that was the guy who ran himself into the ground. But I was doing it because I love the sport, but I was also doing it because I wanted to be run into the ground. Now, is that healthy? No. Is it healthier than what I was doing before? Definitely. So it was a step in the right direction. Now, there's always going to be a line here, and it's going to be different to every person, but we get the same way with diet plans, for example. Like, most of the people I coach, I purposely put one off plan meal in their program every week. And I always emphasize it needs to be with friends or family, but we want to maintain the ability to go off plan and not have your entire world fall apart, because otherwise you're not following a diet plan. The diet plan is controlling you. So there's a similar kind of adage there with your workouts, where if it gets to a point where you can't move a workout a day forward, or you can't maybe go a couple of days without training because you've got a family vacation or something like that, then you need to step back and analyze. We're talking about those pillars of self-confidence that you're built on. Is that pillar too big? Is that one too foundational and are the others too small? Maybe actually, do I need to spend less time investing in the gym, more time investing in these other relationships or hobbies, whatever they might be, so that those pillars can grow, so that I can actually not be so dependent on that one? And for me, that's usually a test of, if I have clients who have to do certain workouts on certain days, or they stress is like, well, I'm meant to train 4 days a week this week I can only train 3. I more often, and this will sound really like not a hardcore thing to say as a strength coach, right? I more often than not, considerably, I tell my clients to miss a workout rather than shut up and go do it. Because if you don't have the ability to just say, that's okay for this week, push it forward to next Monday rather than training on Saturday. Again, the training program is controlling you, but not the way around. But I would say the caveat to that is, what needs to happen for that to work is they need to also be focused when they are in the gym. And a lot of the time, this is where the problem, I think, comes from, is we try to use quantity to make up for quality, as in we don't train hard enough when we're in the gym. We're distracted. We're answering emails and text messages. We're not truly there. We're not truly bringing the intensity to it that we should. So then, because the intensity is lacking, we are more dependent on it doing it more frequently to feel like we've done enough work to maintain our results. Whereas if you have someone train truly hard twice in a week, they can turn around and tell you quite honestly, like, that's enough to get by. That will be fine. So it's creating a relationship where when you're in the gym, you are in the gym. That is, like, to me, it's like meditation. To other people will have different terms for it or whatever, but that is the place I go and I am only there. And, that hour or 90 minutes, whatever it might be, is to my fullest intent. And then but once I step out the door, it's gone. And people would say the same thing about, your work life. You shut the office door, it should be gone. It's the exact same with the gym. It doesn't mean you don't love it. It doesn't mean you don't try really hard, but also it doesn't mean that you're thinking about it every minute of every day when you're not there, because that's not healthy either. And we see this really commonly with people with like sex, for example, and people who are like pornography addict. They think about sex all day, but then when they're actually in the act of it, they think about everything else. And that type of mindset actually bleeds into everything. The people who are obsessed about hitting those workouts and think about they finish their workout on Wednesday and they're already thinking about their workout on Friday, they're very often the same people who are in the gym on their phone and being distracted by everything else. Sorry.
Is that a problem with just not being able to be present in the now?
You literally took the words out of my mouth. And that's exactly what it is. So often I find with those individuals who are maybe clinging to the gym too much, the first question is, what else do you have going on that's fulfilling in your life? There needs to be other things. The gym cannot be everything. There's only so many hours in the day you can train. And then secondly, when you are in the gym and you do get that time, which, we value and we love, how present really are you? Are you left wanting more just because you weren't really there in the first place? Because if you were, chances are you probably want a break from it, and I do think that sometimes also it's understated or undervalued to actually miss the gym. In the same way that, let's, for example, me and Naomi, we live together, we work together, we both work from home. Every now and then, it's kind of nice when one of us goes away for a few days, because you get the opportunity to miss each other. You get the opportunity to realize, oh, my life is actually way better when she's here. And then guess what happens when she comes home? I appreciate her way more. And we should be looking to get the same relationship with the gym, in my opinion. We should love every moment of it when we're there. And then we should appreciate it when we get to step back foot in there and do it all over again. And if you're not present enough during those workouts, you never get in that cycle and you never really get to that point of appreciation, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Let's do more on the addiction side. There's some stuff you said there earlier. Do you think fitness and dieting behavior can become socially acceptable ways to have eating disorders, or I guess orthorexia, sort of more of the physical manifestation of the same psychology?
Yeah. Well, again, hand up. Okay. So I've been diagnosed as bulimic, anorexic, and everything in between. I once had a streak on MyFitnessPal where I logged everything I ate for, I think it was like 1,200 and something days. So over 4 years, maybe 5 years.
What kind of anxiety would it create at the thought of missing a day of logging at that point?
Huge. I would be I didn't really sleep much at that point. I had crazy insomnia, but like I would be the person logging it all at 3 a.m. to make sure that I logged it and whatever else, So I have been there, which is why I feel I can say some of these things, because I'm not a person in a glass house throwing stones. I get it. What I'm saying is that there are ways out, or that the biggest thing is that you just need to realize it's happening, for a start. And I do think there are a lot of people out there that are using it to justify unhealthy habits with food and with the gym, and then using it as a way to almost double down on those habits. And can it do more harm than good? I'm sure it can. But for me, the question always becomes there. If someone is in a bad place, we can't just magically click our fingers to get them out of that bad place. Which bad place do we want them in? Do we want them being the macro tracker and focusing on, I only eat organic, skinless chicken breast and broccoli? Or do we want them in the place where they eat in deep fried chicken wings or whatever, every night on their way home from work? Well, okay, if we're going to be in a bad place, that's a less bad place to be. At least there are some positives to that. But a lot of that still comes down to the root of, are they doing it because they feel like they don't trust themselves to have self-control? As in, like, if I miss that one meal, or again, if I have that one thing that's not on my plan, that's when the dam breaks open. And that, with those people, usually what happens is that one cookie turns into a box, and it turns into a 12-hour binge fest or whatever it might be. So for them, doubling down on that kind of eating disorder, if we want to call it that, is them just trying to hold back the dam desperately because they know what's going to happen if there's even the tiniest crack in there. And, in the short term, that's okay. Like, if that gets you by and it makes you not physically unwell, then that's okay. But we also need to realize that you only get out of that by having controlled levels of variance and allowing yourself to deviate from it, because you get good at what you practice. And if you only ever practice being 100% adherent to something to a level where it negatively affects the rest of your life, then that's what you're going to get progressively better at. You're going to become more and more doubled down on it. And, one of my clients recently had a bad workout and hurt their shoulder. So an exercise that we did with them was just, I got him to like divide up a column of all the things that bring him a lot of fulfillment in life, or things that he gets to do on a daily basis that give him a good feeling of happiness, right? And I said, right, now write that down. You can divide it into columns like home life, family life, work life, hobbies, whatever. And I said, right, okay, so you've hurt your shoulder. How many of the things on that list can you not do because your shoulder is hurt? And you cross off like 2 out of 25, right? That's okay. So it doesn't really affect that much in the grand scheme of things, right? But again, those individuals that are caught in that loop also tend to be the people that don't have a huge amount of things going on outside. So they have to control that because everything else is chaos. Everything else is not bringing them any happiness or fulfillment. So a lot of the time, at least I find, and again, I'm not a registered therapist or psychologist. This is just from 13 years of coaching people who, funny enough, everyone has problems. The more you can get them to invest in the rest of their life and bring all those other things up, the better they're able to go, you know what, it's okay if I miss that meal or I go out for a meal with my family or what, because that isn't everything that I am. And if we wanted to go down a deeper rabbit hole, that's probably where it comes down to, in truth, is a kind of form of self-identification where if the gym is the only thing you are going to cling with it with absolutely everything you have. If you're the guy who's always known for being 8% body fat, you're the ripped guy, but you don't have anything else to your identity, yeah, it's going to be really hard to let yourself gain any body fat or give yourself a week off the gym or whatever it might be. But if you're the guy who's 8% body fat, is a great dad, has a job that they enjoy, has maybe, they're on like a weekend football team or whatever, then if you let yourself go a little bit in one, that's okay, because that isn't your entire being sacrificed there. It's just a tiny small part of it altering a little bit. So to me, that's probably a big part of it. Is the gym too much of your identity? Is your diet too much of your identity? And if so, then a lot of the time that isn't actually where you need to focus. It's quite opposite. It's you need to focus on the other things and spread your identity away from those things.
I suspect a lot of people are filling other voids with the gym. So
Yes.
you just said one of the, I think, the red flags for identifying where you're dancing on the edges or you crossed over into dangerous territory. Are there any other red flags that you say to people, this should be something you keep your eyes on if it manifests, where you think that someone may have an unhealthy relationship with the gym, it's tipped over into maladaptive addiction, anything?
Sure. I think for me, the biggest red flag outside of the being overly structured or habitual is just the always wanting to do more. That probably comes in a very close second, where I've had clients where you could give them almost anything. You could give them German volume training, whatever. They will always ask, what can I add to this to make it more effective? And that's where you kind of start to get the idea of, okay, this is a problem, because we know that's already a lot of work, and you deep down, you know that too. So what are you trying to escape from by adding in that extra? You've mentioned the endorphins and stuff already. Is it just trying to chase those because for a while they make you feel okay? Because I've been there. Like I said, I was self-harming multiple times a day. That releases endorphins. It works, unfortunately, right? But that doesn't mean it's good, and it just reinforces a habit of quick wins in a really unhealthy way. So to me, always wanting to do more or constantly pushing too hard is the second red flag or second biggest red flag. And again, it doesn't sound like a really cool thing to say as a strength coach who, is trying to make people better. But more often than not, my advice to clients is just ease it off a little bit, just a little bit, or do a little bit less, or let yourself miss the last set because you're feeling exhausted or whatever it might be. Because are you really doing it now because you want the results, or are you doing it as some form of self-punishment, sometimes of some kind of unhealthy habituation? Like, then you really need to start looking at what the driving force is behind doing the workout.
Do you think that the obsession with chasing recovery modalities is either a way to increase capacity to just try to do too much, add more, or B, a a shift in that someone still has the compulsion to do more, but at least now they're going, all right, well, I can't lift anymore, train anymore, but I can still feel like this compulsion to do more on the recovery side of stuff. And then they're doing, and it's not to demonize everything like cold plunging or saunas or whatever as somehow maladaptive. They have their place in context. But do you think there's some of that going on?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I see this pretty regularly. It's just, well, if I can't train, what can I do at home? What can I do to still be in training mode, like in athlete mode? And to a degree, it's admirable, that people want to do all they can to be the best that they can. But everyone wants to be all in until they want you tell them to do the stuff they don't want to do. Dave Tate says that on the podcast all the time, and it's so true. When the best thing for their progress becomes sit down and be bored or sleep more or don't do anything, then they're not all in. So that would be the question I pose to those individuals is, if the best thing for your recovery right now was just to do nothing, would you do it? Because for example, I was a terrible competitor in powerlifting because I would train all the way up to it because I was addicted to training. And as soon as I knew the training program worked, I didn't care about the comp anyway. I was like, I know I'm stronger. I don't care anymore. So I would train right up to the comp because I had to train. So I would always go into the competition, usually more fatigued than I was like 2 weeks out because I was just ready to lift heavy and I wanted to, so I did, which, sounds a stupid thing to say as a coach, but I know that's a really bad thing to do now. And I have a lot of evidence for that. So in that scenario, someone would look at me and say, well, what are you competing for? Because if you really wanted to compete, to be good at competing, you would not do that. And for me, I never enjoyed competing. I competed because I felt I had to get kudos as a coach. Because how can you be a good coach if you haven't competed yourself? And it just made that glaringly obvious to me that if I really wanted to be a good athlete, I would do the stuff that I don't want to do, which is rest up before your competition. So then you can ask yourself the same question. If I'm really driven to this physical pursuit, whatever that might be for that individual, am I really willing to do the things that I should be doing, which in this scenario is rest up and have something else going on, do something different, be bored, as Louis Simmons would say. If you want to be great at anything, get ready to be bored. Am I willing to, we see a very similar thing with like exercise variation, for example, almost like training ADD, right? People need to do a different training program every 2 or 3 weeks. Are you really driven to the goal? Or are you in the gym to be entertained? Now, if you train for fun, that is absolutely fine. Please go do that because that's better than sitting on the sofa eating ice cream, right? But if you're saying that you want to achieve X, Y, and Z, and you're changing your exercises or your program every 2 or 3 weeks at a whim, then you need to ask yourself, why am I really in the gym? And I think there is no bad reason to be in the gym, but you need to be aligned with what your motivations are. When your actions and your motivations aren't aligned, that's where the problems start to come in because internally you're trying to pursue one thing and externally you're going towards another thing. If someone just trains for fun, do whatever you want. Power to you, please do. Like if someone wants to have very specific goals, then usually you need a very specific plan. And for example, if someone wants to be good at powerlifting, okay, that's fine. Are you willing to do squat, bench, and deadlift regularly with a laser-like focused on your technical precision and all these types of things? If you are, fantastic. If that motivates you, then your motivations and your goals align. If you're someone who wants to go in and today I want to do power cleans and then I want to do sled pushes and then next week I want to do a bodybuilding split, and that's also fine, but that isn't how you be a good powerlifter. So then you got to ask yourself, what is it I'm really getting out of this? And that's where so many of these issues that we've talked about really have the answer lying in introspection, where we just need to spend more time with ourselves, again, without sending to like guru-y and Eastern philosophy. Like, you really need to spend a bit of time with yourself and start asking yourself these kind of more pertinent questions of, why am I doing the things that I want to do? What parts of the activity that I do actually give me fulfillment? Because sometimes it's really not the thing that you think. And I'm sure you've had this conversation with people where you ask people, why are you in the gym? The first answer you get is rarely the true one, or the answer they give in public is very rarely the real one. You know, it might be something underlying that.
Well, and I love this phenomenon because this is post-rationalization. It's one of the key functions of the human brain and how we exist. We will always state the most socially acceptable answer when in fact there may be something far more emotional or instinctive driving these things. It's just, you're right, people don't necessarily feel comfortable sharing the real reason, right?
No, absolutely. And, you know, that, and I think also there's a bit of a stigma there. And, you know, you've kind of mentioned that there are certain parties or groups of people that like to, you know, make negative out of particular reasons for being in the gym. Like, for a long time, it was kind of made out like being in the gym for aesthetic reasons is a bad thing. Well, why is that a bad thing? Can we all genuinely sit here and say we wouldn't want to be in better physical shape and look better naked? Like, are we really going to make that out? Like, if that's why you're in the gym and that gives you fulfillment, then power to you. Who cares? Like, you're in there working hard, making yourself better. And I think some people almost have guilt now, where it's like, well, maybe you do just go into the gym to enjoy yourself. Why does that make it bad? Like, if this was any other context, right? Let's say you wanted to learn guitar, picked up a guitar and said to your friends, like, oh, I've started playing just because it's enjoyable. I want to just learn a couple of different songs that I like, and I don't really want to do anything crazy with it. They'd be like, that's cool, good for you. Whereas it's almost in the fitness industry, it's almost looked at like, if you don't get into it for some hardcore, super driven reason, that's a problem. So like, to use the same analogy, you'd have to start learning guitar because you want to be Jimi Hendrix and you want to be a professional guitarist. But that most people don't. Most people are picking that guitar up because it just gives them an outlet that they enjoy. It allows them to be creative and have some freedom in that regard. And I think we need to make that okay more in the fitness industry. Like, know where you're at, know your motivations, and own them, and know that no one else in this world should be able to tell you what your motivation is or should be, because there is only living your life based on other people's expectations or motivations is a really great way to end up miserable in the long term. And as soon as you know, like, this is here in my life because it gives me X, the more clear and all of your motivations and all of your goals and the processes are going to become to get you towards them.
Are there any guardrails that you found work, the people you work with, to help protect someone from tipping over an edge where fitness stops being something positive and healthy and tips over into something maladaptive?
For sure. And I honestly, the best answer I have to that is probing questions or uncomfortable questions. And with, you know, we spoke a little bit on the table talk about how one of the best things about being, and I'm not saying everyone needs a coach, but one of the best things about being with a coach in the longer term is you have a good enough relationship that they can say things to you that a coach wouldn't say to you after 2 weeks, you know? And that's really important because you need someone to check you every now and then on why you're doing the things that you're doing. And I think a big part of it then is just encouraging them to be introspective of, have in mind, what is the goal of the gym in your life? What, you know, that pillar that we're resting on, what is it meant to be giving us in return? You know, if you're a competitive athlete, that's a little bit different, right? But for the other 99.9%, what purpose is it serving? Okay, now keep that in mind. What is it giving you right now? And are the actions that you're taking right now taking you closer to that purpose? And also, perhaps more importantly, are they taking you towards that purpose, but are they perhaps detracting from your other pillars too much? Because if we look at a person as a whole, as in, let's say this person has 4 pillars, you know, their family, their hobbies, the gym, and their career. If they're pushing the gym too much, and yeah, sure, it's giving them some incremental benefit, but because of it, they're not spending time with their wife and kids. They're, you know, not focusing at work, or they've stopped going to their pickup football games at the weekend. Is the return really worth the investment? Because again, if we go back to identification, you are not your training program. You are a human being who follows a training program. And if the training program is giving 5% more when you go all in, but it's taking 5 or 10% away from those other 3 pillars, you are at a huge net negative. So I do think then it's a big part of looking at the whole landscape of this person's life and fulfillment and saying, is it pushing everything up or is it dialing other things back at its own consequence? And everyone's going to sit in different places in that relationship. Some people can turn that gym dial all the way up to 10 because those other things don't suffer because of that. Other people, maybe you've got like 3 young kids and a really busy career. Maybe that gym dial can only be at 4 or 5 before all those other things start to scale down. But in reality, and I can't remember if we mentioned this in the podcast. I was coaching a guy, still am, who is desperate to hit £1,000 squat, and he absolutely will do it. But like a year or two ago, he was really close, but all those other pillars outside the gym going way down at the expense of this one. And we made the decision to say, look, that £1,000 squat, that can wait a year or 2 years, whatever it might be. Do you really want to squat £1,000 and be divorced or not have a job anymore or whatever it might be? Now, I think it's probably 2 years later now, he's very much in line to do that again very soon, but all of those other things are in a better place. And guess what? His training is better than it's ever been because those pillars make up who you are. And you can't be a great athlete if all of those other things are crumbling around you. I don't care what anyone says. Maybe in the short term, but in the long term, no.
You look at someone like Chris Bumstead. It seems like, he's got an incredible support structure with his, wife and, I guess I don't know if he's had his kid yet, but it looks like that part of his life was actually a critical foundation of his ability to apply himself to be the greatest in his sport of his generation.
Yeah, for sure. And there's only so much someone can do whilst the rest of their life is falling apart or not where it should be. Like anyone can dive their head into the gym as like hiding their head in the sand. That might get you through 4 or 6 weeks, whatever it might be. But the one thing that the gym should be making painfully obvious to most of us is that anything really worth achieving is going to take a pretty long time. And anyone who wants to be able to train productively and get towards goals that really do require time and effort on time frames that we're talking about, they need to be pretty dialed in everywhere else because miserable people don't work that hard. They don't commit to things. And I think glorifying the whole kind of all-in attitude where the rest of your life kind of suffers because of it is a really damaging thing to do. And I'm not saying there's obviously a balance there where people should be so kind of all in into the gym to a degree to get the results. But to me, being all in means being all in everything you do, not just in the gym at the detriment of everything else.
This makes me think about kind of my life's journey and my career. And I remember a time, a long time ago, I moved to Edmonton. I was leaving. I've mentioned numerous times in various podcasts that I used to be a bar owner, and that came with nightlife and a lot of like negative stuff. And I left and moved across the country effectively to kind of start over again. And I found myself first immersed in World of Warcraft, and that was a place to hide from the world. But even though there were maladaptive elements, it was trending in a direction. Then I got back in the gym after a brief hiatus, and I realized they couldn't coexist. So then I, got really immersed in the gym as I was working this job that wasn't particularly fulfilling. But that ultimately led to being asked to become a trainer. And I've told this story in lots of places where I didn't start as this young person with a passion for training. I kept getting bothered on the gym floor by the staff until I finally said, okay, I'll start being a trainer 14 and a half years ago. Never had a clue as to where that would lead. And then working in that gym, I got pretty darn good at and very busy very fast. And I started diving into educational resources, but also the environment I was in, I made a lot of friends. And so most of my closest friends in the world are people I met initially in that old gym. And then over time in my career, as other opportunities have grown, made more and more friends, people who are very close and dear to me. And that's enriched my life. And I've been all in a very big way in terms of the, training, but that led to the career that I've been very all in on. But that has actually enriched my world with relationships and great people. And it has improved my world. Like, very early on in this episode, you talked about or alluded to the trusting in the process and the compounding efforts and nothing comes easy. Well, I just on my social media announced my first ever podcast sponsorship, which is Renaissance Periodization. Regular listeners will start hearing those ads. But I actually secured 2 more sponsorships back to back just because of circumstance. And I was ready to embrace this stuff. And this stuff's coming to me. And these are all very, very good things. I will reveal all very soon. But that was off the back of 7 years and 350 plus episodes of this podcast alone, like not to mention probably 200 appearances and a secondary podcast that had 70-ish episodes, at another point. so there's a long runway there. And so do they getting offered, Nick Shaw, my friend, who will be on very soon. In fact, he may be the very next episode of Renaissance Periodization, asking me if I want to, have Renaissance Periodization sponsor me. I'm like, are you kidding? Of course, absolutely. Uh, so that felt incredible, but it just made me think about all that. So
Yeah,
let's
for sure.
let's clue up here. People can follow you at Phoenix Performance Training. That's your
Correct.
Instagram handle.
Mhm.
Is there anywhere else you want to send people website resources?
No, that's the only social media I have that is that's enough for me to be brutally honest. Me and Naomi are actually in the process this year of kind of rebranding and launching our own thing.
Mhm.
So hopefully within the next kind of 6 to 9 months, we're going to have our own website hub and all this type of thing. But all of our coaching services and stuff like that, we either just, are done through word of mouth and referrals and through Instagram. So Instagram and DMs are the way to reach me if you need anything. But we are working on expanding and being able to give out more content to people and provide more services to people outside of the kind of one-to-one coaching that we do right now. I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on. It's been really cool to connect with you again. I really enjoyed spending time with you when you were here in Ohio, so this has been good fun.
And likewise, I mean, one of the biggest honors of my career is to be able to go and appear, visit Elite FTS just outside of Columbus, and be in that space and to sit with you guys. And again, you're around Dave Tate all the time. And when I first started reading T Nation, I'm reading Dave Tate and all these other icons of the industry. And then you and I are the kind of, and Christian Thibodeau, and then you and I are in the same boat. That allowed us to turn around. You've written a ton for T Nation. People can find a lot of your articles on Elite FTS. So you've got a lot of stuff out there if they want to dive deeper into your expertise on that. And just again, thanks for taking the time. And one of the most fulfilling things about my career is the friends I've made in my travels. And I never lose sight of that. So that's a key enriching thing for me. So thank you for coming
Super.
on, Tom. I appreciate it. I want everybody to go check out what you're doing, follow you. And for everybody listening, just thanks for being along for the ride. There's some really cool stuff happening again with the sponsorship stuff. So I would love to hear from you. Post this up, tag me, message me on Instagram. That's the easiest way. And we will talk. I want to hear how you enjoy these episodes. Everybody, thank you so much.